A stranger on the horizon. The barren plains of Novaterra stretched out under a pale green sky, broken only by jagged cliffs and the occasional shadow of winged predators soaring high above. Captain Elias Harper stood at the observation window of his vessel, the Starborn. He wasn't here to admire the alien landscape, though it had a stark beauty. His mission was clear: establish diplomatic contact with the mysterious Vorton species, who had been waging an increasingly hostile campaign against human frontier colonies. Elias ran a hand through his dark, close-cropped hair, his sharp green eyes scanning the horizon. The Vortons were an enigma. Few had seen them up close, and even fewer had lived to tell the tale. They were rumored to be massive, armored beings, their culture steeped in war and conquest. But Elias didn't see monsters, he saw a challenge. Humanity had faced extinction before, and every time, they had survived, evolved, and thrived. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we've received a transmission," said Lieutenant Mira Solis, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. She was one of the best communication officers in the fleet, her quick wit matched only by her unwavering loyalty to the crew. "Patch it through," Elias replied, straightening his posture. The screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike any Elias had ever seen. The Vorton emissary loomed large, their exoskeleton shimmering like molten metal under the dim light of their command chamber. Their deep, resonant voice echoed across the bridge. "Human vessel, state your purpose or be annihilated." Elias suppressed a smile. It wasn't the warmest of welcomes, but it wasn't unexpected either. "This is Captain Elias Harper of the Starborn. I come in peace, seeking dialogue between our peoples." The Vorton's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Dialogue? Your kind encroaches upon Vorton space. Your peace is a lie." Elias stepped closer to the screen, his gaze unflinching. "We didn't come here to take from you. We came to understand. If you believe otherwise, then perhaps we should speak face to face." A low growl reverberated through the transmission. "Brave words, human. Your kind's bravery often walks hand in hand with foolishness. But very well. Come to the coordinates I will transmit. Bring no weapons, or your life will be forfeit." The screen went dark, leaving a tense silence on the bridge. "Captain, this could be a trap," Mira said, her voice edged with concern. "We don't even know what kind of weapons they possess." Elias turned to her, his expression calm but resolute. "Every first contact is a gamble, Lieutenant. But if we don't take the risk, we'll never bridge the gap between us and the stars." The shuttle cut through the planet's thin atmosphere, its engines humming as Elias guided it toward the rendezvous point. The terrain grew rougher, jagged rocks jutting out like the bones of a forgotten giant. As the shuttle touched down, Elias felt a familiar mix of anticipation and caution. This was humanity's strength, the willingness to step into the unknown, not with blind arrogance, but with calculated determination. The Vorton delegation awaited him, their massive forms casting long shadows under the pale sunlight. At the center stood their leader, an imposing figure with intricate markings etched into their exoskeleton. "You have courage, human," the leader said, their voice a low rumble. "But courage alone will not save your kind." Elias stepped forward, meeting the leader's gaze. "Perhaps not. But understanding might." A murmur rippled through the Vortons, their expressions unreadable. The leader tilted their head, a gesture that Elias interpreted as curiosity. "We shall see, Captain Harper. We shall see." The veil of war. Elias felt the weight of countless eyes on him as he stood before the towering Vorton leader. The air was thick with tension, and even the faint hum of the alien wind felt oppressive. Despite their intimidating presence, Elias wasn't deterred. He had faced worse odds before, and humanity's resilience had always been its greatest asset. The Vorton leader, whose name Elias learned was Zarkith Var, gestured for him to follow. The delegation led him into a vast, cavernous structure carved into the side of a cliff. The walls shimmered faintly, as though they were alive with energy. Patterns resembling ancient glyphs pulsed softly, casting eerie shadows across the group. Elias's mind raced. He couldn't tell if these markings were decorative, functional, or something entirely different. Whatever they were, they spoke to a culture as advanced as it was mysterious. "We do not entertain outsiders lightly," Zarkith said, his voice reverberating off the walls. "Do not mistake this for weakness. If you betray our trust, the consequences will be swift." Elias nodded, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I understand. My only aim is to find a path that benefits both our peoples. Humanity seeks allies, not enemies." A sharp laugh echoed from one of the Vorten warriors, a massive figure with crimson accents across their exoskeleton. "Allies? Your kind builds weapons while speaking of peace. Do you think we are fools, Captain Harper?" Elias turned to face the warrior, his expression steady. "We build weapons because we've had to survive. Our galaxy hasn't been kind to those who come unprepared. But survival isn't the same as conquest. We're here to prove that we don't have to be enemies." The warriors stepped closer, their massive frame towering over Elias. But before they could speak, Zarkith raised a hand. "Enough, Koresh. Let the human speak." Koresh reluctantly stepped back, their glowing eyes never leaving Elias. As they continued deeper into the structure, Elias began to notice subtle signs of wear and age. Cracks ran through the glowing walls, and some of the glyphs flickered intermittently. It was a stark contrast to the imposing presence the Vortens projected. "Your people are strong," Elias said, testing the waters. "But it seems even strength can be tested by time." Zarkitha's gaze snapped toward him, sharp and assessing. "Careful, human. Your words tread on dangerous ground." "I mean no offense," Elias replied, his tone calm. "I only meant that strength alone isn't always enough. Humanity learned that the hard way. It's why we reached for the stars, why we learned to adapt, to collaborate." Zarkith stopped, his massive frame casting a long shadow over Elias. "Collaboration is a concept that has often led to betrayal. Why should we believe humans are any different?" Elias hesitated, carefully choosing his next words. "Because collaboration is the only reason we're still here. Humanity isn't perfect, but we've survived by working together, even with those who were once our enemies. It's not always easy, but it's always worth trying." For a moment, Zarkith said nothing, his expression inscrutable. Then, he turned and gestured for Elias to follow once more. They entered a large chamber filled with what could only be described as a war council. A holographic display hovered in the center, showing what Elias recognized as a star map. Points of light marked Vorten-controlled systems, but many of them were surrounded by ominous red zones. "Conflict zones," Elias guessed. Zarkith spoke, his tone heavy. "You see now why your arrival is poorly timed. Our borders are under constant attack by an enemy that knows no mercy. They call themselves the Zurith, and they do not speak, they do not negotiate. They only consume." Elias studied the map, noting the rapid spread of red zones. The Zuritha's advance was relentless, cutting through Vorten territory like a wildfire. His brow furrowed as he realized the implications. "If what you say is true, then this isn't just your fight," Elias said. "The Zurith won't stop at your borders. They'll spread until there's nothing left." Zarkitha's gaze darkened. "Precisely. Which is why I question your motives, human. Are you here to offer aid? Or to exploit our struggle for your own gain?" Elias stepped closer to the map, his voice steady but resolute. "I'm here because humanity knows what it's like to face impossible odds. We've been pushed to the brink before, and we've survived because we stood together. If you'll let us, we can help you do the same." Koresh scoffed from the edge of the room. "Bold words for a species so small. What can your kind possibly offer the Vorten?" Elias turned to face Koresh, his green eyes blazing with determination. Ingenuity. Resourcefulness. A perspective you might not have considered. Humanity doesn't win because we're the strongest or the fastest. We win because we adapt. The room fell silent. Zarkith studied Elias for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he turned to the holographic map, his massive hand hovering over a particularly volatile red zone. There is a Vorten colony here, Zarkith said. The Zurith have besieged it for months, and our forces are stretched too thin to provide aid. If you truly wish to prove your worth, Captain Harper, then you will go there and help them. Elias nodded without hesitation. Tell me what you need. Zarkitha's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. We shall see, human. We shall see. The Siege of Vorta Prime. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it descended through the thick, smoke-laden atmosphere of Vorta Prime. The planet, once a thriving Vorten colony, now bore the scars of relentless Zurith attacks. Craters pockmarked the surface, and towering spires that once reflected Vorten ingenuity now lay shattered like forgotten relics. Captain Elias Harper gripped the shuttle's controls with calm determination, his focus on the flickering beacon guiding him to the colony's defensive perimeter. Beside him, Lieutenant Mira Solis monitored the comms, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced precision. Defensive systems are barely holding, Mira reported, her voice tight. I'm picking up Zurith biosignatures swarming the perimeter. The colony doesn't have much time. Elias's jaw tightened. Then we'll make it in time. As the shuttle broke through the smoke, the colony came into view, a sprawling structure of interlocking domes surrounded by makeshift barricades. Swarms of Zurith, grotesque, insectoid creatures with armored exoskeletons and razor-sharp appendages, clashed against the colony's defenses like waves against a crumbling dam. Hang on, Elias said, yanking the controls to bring the shuttle in low and fast. The vessel weaved through enemy fire, narrowly avoiding a barrage of Zurith projectiles. The shuttle landed hard inside the colony's perimeter, its doors hissing open as Elias and Mira stepped out, weapons at the ready. Vorten soldiers turned to stare at the newcomers, small and unarmored by comparison, yet carrying themselves with unshakable resolve. A Vorten commander approached, his armor dented and scorched from battle. You are the human sent by Zarkith? His tone was incredulous. Elias nodded, extending a hand. Captain Elias Harper. We're here to help. The commander hesitated before clasping Elias's hand in a firm grip. I am Commander Ralvar. If you truly wish to help, then you'll fight. Our defenses won't last another cycle. The Zurith attack intensified as the hours dragged on. Elias and Mira worked alongside the Vorten soldiers, their ingenuity quickly proving invaluable. Captain, the barricades won't hold. Mira shouted over the din of battle. Elias scanned the battlefield, his mind racing. The Zurith were relentless, their strategy brutally efficient. But like all creatures, they had weaknesses. Focus fire on their flanking units. Elias ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. They're trying to collapse our perimeter from the sides. Push them back, and we can funnel the rest into a choke point. Ralvar relayed the order, his deep voice booming. The Vorten soldiers adjusted their tactics, their heavy weapons tearing through the Zurith flank. The tide of the battle shifted, if only slightly. Elias ducked behind a barricade, his rifle humming as he recharged its energy cells. Mira crouched beside him, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. You've got a plan, right? She asked, her tone both hopeful and exasperated. I'm working on it, Elias replied. His eyes flicked to the colony's power core, a massive, glowing structure at the center of the settlement. If we can reroute power from the core, we might be able to overload the perimeter defenses. It'll take down everything within range, Zurith included. Mira frowned. Including us. Elias grinned. Not if we time it right. The plan was dangerous, bordering on reckless, but there was no alternative. While Mira and a team of Vorten engineers worked to reroute power to the defenses, Elias and Ralvar led a desperate charge to hold the Zurith back. The battlefield was a maelstrom of violence. Elias's combat suit enhanced his reflexes, allowing him to dodge and counter the Zurith's vicious strikes. Beside him, Ralvar fought with a ferocity that belied his injuries, his massive frame cutting through the enemy ranks like a battering ram. "Harper!" Ralvar called, his voice strained. "The humans fight well, but I did not expect such resolve." Elias smirked, firing off a burst of plasma rounds. "We don't give up easily." A deafening roar interrupted their exchange. A massive Zurith beast, easily 3 times the size of its kin, emerged from the smoke. Its chitinous armor glowed faintly, and its mandibles clicked menacingly. Ralvar cursed in his native tongue. "A Zurith overlord. It will tear through our forces." Elias glanced at the power core, where Myra's team was still working. Time was running out. "Keep it busy," Elias said, already moving. "I've got an idea." Ralvar stared after him, incredulous. "You are mad, human." Elias didn't respond. He sprinted toward the Overlord, dodging its massive claws by the narrowest of margins. His suit's HUD analyzed the creature, identifying weak points along its underbelly. It was risky, but it was the only chance they had. Using the debris as cover, Elias climbed onto the beast's back, his plasma blade igniting with a hiss. The Overlord thrashed wildly, but Elias held on, driving the blade into the gaps in its armor. The creature let out an ear-piercing screech, its movements growing more frantic. "Now, Mira!" Elias shouted into his comm. The colony's defenses roared to life, a surge of energy ripping through the perimeter. Zurith forces disintegrated in waves, their bodies reduced to ash. The Overlord reared back, its death throes shaking the ground, before finally collapsing in a heap. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent save for the crackle of dying flames. The Zurith were gone, their forces obliterated. Elias climbed down from the Overlord's corpse, his movements slow and weary. Mira ran to meet him, her expression a mix of relief and exasperation. "You really need to stop trying to get yourself killed," she said, helping him steady himself. Elias grinned. "Where's the fun in that?" Ralvar approached, his armor battered but his posture proud. "Captain Harper, you have done what many thought impossible. The colony owes its survival to you and your people." Elias met the Vorten commander's gaze, his expression serious. "This was just one battle. If the Zurith are as relentless as they seem, we're going to need more than survival. We're going to need unity." Ralvar nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps there is strength in collaboration after all." As the survivors began the arduous task of rebuilding, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but for the first time, he sensed the possibility of a future where humanity and the Vortens stood together against the darkness. A new alliance. The colony of Vorta Prime, battered but standing, became the heart of a burgeoning alliance. The fires of battle had barely cooled before Elias Harper found himself seated at a makeshift council table alongside Commander Ralvar and other key Vorten leaders. The mood was tense, but beneath the unease lay a flicker of possibility, one born of shared survival. Zarkithvar's holographic projection dominated the center of the table, his imposing form no less intimidating at a distance. "Ralvar, report," Zarkith commanded, his deep voice resonating through the room. Ralvar stood, his massive form casting a long shadow. "The human Captain Harper and his team were instrumental in our victory. Without their ingenuity, Vorta Prime would have fallen." Zarkitha's glowing eyes shifted to Elias. "So, the human gamble pays off. Yet, this was only one battle. The Zurith remain relentless, their forces vast. What does your kind propose, Captain Harper?" Words alone will not stop this war. Elias met Zarkatha's gaze, unflinching. You're right, words alone won't win. But neither will brute force. If we're going to stop the Zurith, we need to think differently. Mira Solis stepped forward, a data pad in hand. Captain Harper and I have been analyzing Zurith attack patterns. They're methodical, almost machine-like. They're not just attacking, they're consuming resources and adapting as they go. If we can disrupt their supply chains, we can slow them down. Zarkatha's expression remained impassive, but the murmurs among the Vorten leaders suggested intrigue. And what would you have us do, human? Our forces are stretched thin. Elias leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. You've seen how humans adapt to survive. Let us help you fortify your defenses. Teach us your technology, and we'll show you ours. Together, we can build something neither of us could alone. The next weeks were a blur of activity. Vorten engineers worked side by side with human specialists, merging their advanced energy technology with humanity's knack for creative problem-solving. The results were astonishing. Where once the colony's defenses had been brittle and outdated, now they bristled with hybrid weaponry capable of targeting Zurith weaknesses with deadly precision. One of the most promising innovations was a shared tactical interface developed by Mira and a Vorten scientist named Koresh. The interface allowed soldiers to coordinate in real time, blending human ingenuity with Vorten precision. During a test run, Elias watched as the system transformed what would have been a chaotic skirmish into a well-orchestrated defense. Koresh, who had been skeptical of humans from the beginning, approached Elias after the trial. Your people think differently than we do, he admitted, his tone begrudging but sincere. You see possibilities where we see limitations. It is disconcerting. Elias smiled. Disconcerting can be good, Koresh. It means we're challenging each other. That's how we grow. Koresh tilted his head, considering the words. Perhaps there is wisdom in that. Despite the progress, tensions remained. Many Vortens were wary of their new allies, their cultural pride making it difficult to fully embrace the partnership. Elias, ever the diplomat, took every opportunity to bridge the gap. One evening, during a rare moment of quiet, Elias joined Ralvar and a group of Vorten soldiers around a small fire. The warriors were sharing stories of battles past, their voices filled with pride and sorrow. When they turned to Elias, he hesitated only briefly before launching into a tale of his own. He spoke of Earth's first encounter with a hostile alien race, of how humanity had been unprepared, outgunned, and nearly wiped out. But he also spoke of how they had rallied, how people of all nations and backgrounds had come together to fight for their survival. We didn't win because we were stronger, Elias said, his voice low but steady. We won because we refused to give up. Because we believed in each other, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Vorten warriors listened intently, their expressions thoughtful. When Elias finished, Ralvar nodded, his respect for the human captain evident. Your kind may be small, Harper, but your spirit is anything but. As the alliance solidified, Elias and Mira began to focus on the next phase of their plan, taking the fight to the Zurith. Using intelligence gathered from the battle at Vorteprime, they identified a critical supply depot deep within Zurith-controlled space. Destroying it would deal a significant blow to the enemy's logistics, buying the Alliance precious time to fortify their defenses. The mission was dangerous, bordering on suicidal. The depot was heavily guarded, and the Zurith's ability to adapt meant that their forces would likely be waiting for any attack. But Elias knew it was a risk they had to take. Zarkith himself approved the mission, his respect for Elias evident despite his stoic demeanor. Do not fail, Captain Harper, he said, his holographic form towering over the war room. The survival of both our peoples depends on it. As Elias prepared for the mission, he found himself standing alone on a ridge overlooking the colony. The stars above were brighter here, unclouded by pollution or the artificial glow of cities. It reminded him of Earth, of the nights he'd spent staring at the sky as a child, dreaming of what lay beyond. Mira approached, her footsteps soft on the rocky ground. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, leaning against a nearby boulder. Elias chuckled. "Just thinking about how far we've come. And how far we still have to go." Mira nodded, her expression serious. "You know this mission could go south in 100 different ways, right?" "I know," Elias replied, his voice steady. "But if it buys us even one more day to prepare, it'll be worth it." Mira smiled faintly. "You always were the optimist. And you always were the realist," Elias shot back, his grin teasing. "That's why we make a good team." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the coming mission heavy but not unbearable. For all their differences, humans and Vortons shared one undeniable truth: they were stronger together. Into the lion's den. The Zurith supply depot loomed in the distance like a metallic hive, its spires bristling with weaponry and bioorganic tendrils that pulsed faintly in the darkness. Captain Elias Harper crouched in the shadow of a jagged rock formation, his visor glowing faintly as it scanned the area. The depot was alive with activity, Zurith drones scuttling across its surface like ants around a nest. Lieutenant Mira Solis, her sharp eyes fixed on a tactical tablet, crouched beside him. "The defenses are even heavier than we expected," she whispered. "Those cannons alone could incinerate a fleet." Elias nodded, his jaw set. "That's why we're here. If we can destroy the power core, the depot goes dark. No cannons, no reinforcements." Behind them, a mixed team of humans and Vortons waited in tense silence. Among them was Koresh, the skeptical Vorton scientist turned strategist, now clad in sleek battle armor. His gaze darted between the depot and Elias, skepticism still lingering despite their recent victories. "You're certain this plan will work, Harper?" Koresh asked, his tone low but edged with doubt. Elias turned to him, his expression calm. "Nothing's certain, Koresh. But if we don't try, the Zurith will keep pushing, and neither of our people will survive." Koresh hesitated, then gave a sharp nod. "Then let us proceed." The team moved with practiced precision, their movements silent as they navigated the rocky terrain. Mira led the way, her tactical expertise ensuring they avoided patrols and motion sensors. The depot loomed larger with every step, its bioorganic structure radiating a faint heat that made Elias's skin crawl. They reached the outer perimeter without incident. Mira raised a hand, signaling for the group to halt. "Here's the tricky part," she murmured. "The power core is deep inside the depot. We'll need to split up. One team will create a distraction while the other plants the charges." "I'll lead the distraction team," Elias said immediately. "Mira, you take the charges." Mira frowned, clearly unhappy. "You sure about this, Captain? You're better at thinking on your feet. We might need that inside." Elias smirked. "Trust me, Mira. You've got this. Besides, I've always had a knack for making a scene." Reluctantly, Mira nodded. She motioned to Koresh and a few others to join her. "We'll move in when the fireworks start." Elias watched as they disappeared into the shadows, his gut tightening. This wasn't the first time he'd put himself in harm's way for the greater good, but the stakes had never felt higher. The distraction team positioned themselves near a cluster of fuel tanks, Zurith drones scuttling just meters away. Elias signaled to the others, his hand hovering over a detonator. "Ready?" he whispered. The team nodded. Elias pressed the button, and a deafening explosion rocked the depot. Flames erupted, sending drones scrambling like disturbed insects. The air filled with the acrid stench of burning fuel and the shriek of Zurith alarms. "Move!" Elias shouted, leading his team in a calculated assault. Their goal wasn't victory but chaos, drawing as many of the Zurith away from the core as possible. The Zurith swarmed toward them, their grotesque forms illuminated by the firelight. Elias's combat suit hummed as it enhanced his reflexes, allowing him to dodge and weave through the onslaught. His plasma rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark. "Harper, we've got incoming," one of the Vortons shouted, pointing to the sky. Elias glanced up to see Zurith aerial units descending. Their sleek, insectoid shapes glinted ominously as they prepared to strike. He cursed under his breath. "Hold them off. We just need to buy time." Meanwhile, Myra's team slipped into the depot through a breach created by the explosion. The interior was even more alien than the exterior, its walls pulsating with a sickly organic glow. The air was humid and thick, making every breath feel labored. Koresh led the way, his armor's sensors scanning for the power core. "This way," he said, his voice clipped. "The core is just ahead." They entered a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating structure that radiated an eerie green light. Tendrils extended from the core, connecting it to the depot's defensive systems. Myra's gaze darted to the tendrils, her tactical mind already calculating. "Set the charges here, here, and here," she ordered, pointing to the tendrils. "We need to sever the core's connections. That'll destabilize the whole system." Koresh and the others moved quickly, planting the charges with practiced efficiency. As they worked, the chamber trembled, a clear sign that the Zurith were aware of their presence. "Hurry," Mira urged, her voice tense. "We've got company." Outside, Elias's team was running out of time. The Zurith aerial units rained fire from above, forcing them to scatter. Elias ducked behind a piece of debris, his mind racing. They couldn't hold out much longer. "Mira, status," he called over the comms. "Charges are set," she replied. "We're moving out now." "Good," Elias said. "We'll keep them busy. Just make sure you—" Before he could finish, a Zurith overlord, a massive, heavily armored creature, burst through the flames. Its roar shook the ground, and its glowing eyes locked onto Elias. "Well, that's new," he muttered. The overlord charged, its massive claws tearing through the terrain. Elias dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. His suit's HUD lit up with warnings, but he ignored them, focusing on the beast. "Harper, fall back!" Ralvar shouted, his massive frame appearing beside him. The Vorton commander fired his energy cannon, the blast barely denting the overlord's armor. "Fall back where?" Elias shot back. "We've got nowhere to go." Ralvar growled, stepping in front of Elias. "Then we stand together." Elias grinned despite himself. "Glad to have you, Commander." Inside the depot, Myra's team detonated the charges. The power core erupted in a brilliant flash of light, its tendrils snapping like brittle twigs. The depot trembled violently, its defenses flickering and failing. Mira activated her comm, "Charges are detonated. Get out now." The explosion sent shockwaves across the battlefield, knocking both Elias and the Overlord to the ground. Dazed but alive, Elias scrambled to his feet as Zurith forces began to retreat, their hive mind destabilized by the loss of the core. Ralvar extended a hand, pulling Elias up. "You did it, Harper." "We did it," Elias corrected, his gaze sweeping the battlefield. For now, the Zurith were beaten. But he knew the war was far from over. As the team regrouped, Elias felt a rare sense of hope. Humanity in the Vortons had faced impossible odds and prevailed, not through strength alone but through collaboration. It was a small victory in a much larger war, but it was a start. And sometimes, a start was all you needed. The cost of victory. The shuttle ride back to Vortiprime was silent, save for the soft hum of its engines. Captain Elias Harper sat near the viewport, watching as the battered colony came into view. The weight of their recent victory against the Zurith hung heavy in the air. They had struck a significant blow, but at a steep cost. Several of their team had not made it back, including 2 Vorton warriors who had fought with unparalleled bravery. Lieutenant Mira Solis broke the silence. "We made it, Captain. Against all odds." Her voice was steady, but Elias could hear the exhaustion beneath it. "We made it," Elias echoed, his green eyes dark with reflection. "But this is just the beginning." The shuttle landed in the colony's central courtyard, where Commander Ralvar and Zarkithvar's holographic projection awaited them. The remaining human and Vorten team members filed out, their faces a mix of pride and sorrow. "You succeeded," Zarkith said, his tone a rare blend of acknowledgement and respect. "The Zurith supply lines have been severed, their advance stalled. But I see the cost of your success etched on your faces." Elias stepped forward, meeting Zarkitha's glowing gaze. "Victory always comes at a price. We lost good people today, human and Vorten alike. But their sacrifice bought us time. Time to prepare, to build something stronger." Ralvar placed a massive hand on Elias's shoulder. "And their sacrifice will not be in vain. We owe them more than words, we owe them action." In the days that followed, the colony became a hive of activity. Human and Vorten engineers worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses, using the hybrid technology developed during their partnership. The losses from the mission only deepened the resolve of both species, pushing them to work harder, faster. Elias found himself spending long hours in strategy meetings with Zarkith, Ralvar, and Koresh. The discussions were often heated, the differences in human and Vorten perspectives leading to friction. But out of that friction came innovation, ideas that neither species could have conceived alone. Mira joined him during one such meeting, her sharp mind cutting through the tension with a clarity that earned even Zarkitha's approval. "If we can establish forward outposts along the Zurith border, we can monitor their movements and respond before they strike," she suggested, pointing to a holographic map. "It's a gamble, but it gives us a chance to stay ahead." Zarkith nodded slowly. "A bold plan, but one with merit. The Zurith adapt quickly, we must do the same." Outside the council chambers, Elias found himself drawn to the Vorten warriors who had fought alongside him. He listened to their stories, shared meals around their fires, and learned about their culture. The more he understood, the more he realized how similar they were beneath their differences. One evening, Ralvar approached him as he stood on the colony's ridge, gazing at the twin moons above. "You've earned their respect," the commander said, his deep voice carrying a hint of approval. "That is no small feat." Elias turned to him, his expression thoughtful. "Respect is earned through action, not words. I only did what needed to be done." Ralvar chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Humility. Another trait I did not expect from humans. You continue to surprise me, Harper." Elias smiled faintly. "And you've taught me more than I ever expected. We're stronger together, Ralvar. That's the only way we'll survive this." But the Zurith were not idle. Scouts reported increased activity along the borders, and strange new patterns in their movements. Koresh's analysis suggested that the Zurith were not merely recovering, they were evolving, adapting to the tactics used against them. "They're learning," Koresh said during a briefing, his tone grim. "Our strike on the supply depot slowed them, but it also revealed our capabilities. They won't make the same mistakes again." Elias felt a familiar knot of tension in his chest. The Zuritha's hive mind efficiency was both their strength and their greatest threat. If humanity and the Vortens didn't act quickly, the Zurith would overwhelm them. "We need to take the fight to them," Elias said, his voice steady. "We can't keep reacting, we have to disrupt them at their core." Zarkith tilted his head, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You propose an offensive?" Elias nodded. "A surgical strike. If we can identify their central command structure, we can destabilize their entire operation." Mira looked up from her tablet, her expression skeptical. "That's assuming they even have a central command. The Zurith don't operate like we do." "Every hive has a queen," Elias countered. "We just have to find it." Preparations for the offensive began immediately. Scouts were dispatched to gather intelligence, while engineers worked to develop new weapons capable of penetrating the Zuritha's formidable defenses. The colony buzzed with urgency, the knowledge that time was running out driving everyone to their limits. As the days turned into weeks, Elias found himself once again drawn to the ridge overlooking the colony. He wasn't surprised when Mira joined him, her presence a comforting constant. "Big plans, Captain," she said, leaning against a nearby rock. "Taking out the Zurith command structure. That's a tall order." Elias smiled faintly. "When have we ever done things the easy way?" Mira chuckled. "Fair point. But you know what this means, right? If we're wrong, if there is no queen, we're risking everything for nothing." Elias turned to her, his green eyes steady. "And if we're right, we end this war. Isn't that worth the risk?" Mira sighed, shaking her head. "You've got a knack for making impossible things sound doable, Harper. Let's just hope the universe agrees with you." As the final preparations were made, Elias felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. The mission ahead would be the most dangerous yet, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But as he looked around at the humans and Vortons working together, he felt a surge of hope. They had come so far, forged a bond that transcended species. And together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The Queen's Gambit. The Zurith command structure loomed ahead, a monstrous biomechanical construct embedded deep within a desolate asteroid field. It pulsed faintly, like a beating heart, exuding an aura of menace that even seasoned soldiers felt in their bones. Captain Elias Harper stood on the bridge of the Starborn, gazing at the tactical display as the ship approached the enemy hive. The mission was clear: destroy the core and sever the Zurith hive mind. Around him, the bridge buzzed with controlled chaos. Lieutenant Mira Solis coordinated the strike teams, her voice calm but firm as she relayed orders. Commander Ralvar and Koresh stood nearby, their Vorton frames a commanding presence amidst the human crew. This was no longer just a human mission, it was the culmination of their alliance. Approaching the target, Mira announced. "The outer defenses are already reacting to our presence." Elias nodded, his jaw set. "Raise shields and deploy decoys. We need to draw their fire away from the strike team." Ralvar stepped forward, his glowing eyes fixed on the tactical map. "Our ground forces are prepared. The moment we breach their perimeter, we'll strike at their core." Koresh added, his voice tinged with urgency, "Remember, Harper, the Zurith adapt quickly. We'll only get one chance at this." Elias took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping the room. "Then let's make it count." The Starborn and its escort fleet launched a coordinated assault on the Zurith defenses. Fighters weaved through a hailstorm of organic projectiles, their sleek forms darting between the enemy's living turrets. Explosions lit up the void, casting eerie shadows over the massive hive. Amidst the chaos, a smaller shuttle broke away from the fleet, slipping through the gaps in the Zurith defenses. On board were Elias, Mira, Ralvar, and a hand-picked team of human and Vorton soldiers. The shuttle vibrated as it dodged enemy fire, its shields barely holding. "Brace yourselves," Elias called. "This is going to be rough." The shuttle pierced the outer shell of the hive, crashing into a cavernous chamber. Sparks flew as it skidded to a halt, its hull groaning under the impact. The team disembarked quickly, weapons at the ready. The air was thick and humid, the walls pulsating with a sickly green glow. "Stay alert," Elias said, his voice low but firm. "The hive won't take this lightly." As if on cue, Zurith drones swarmed from the shadows, their grotesque forms screeching as they charged. The team opened fire, a mix of human and Vorton weapons tearing through the enemy ranks. The battle was brutal and chaotic, but the team pushed forward, their determination unshakable. Deeper into the hive, the air grew warmer, the walls more alive. Koresh's scanner beeped, its reading spiking wildly. "We're close," he said, his voice tense. The core is just ahead. The team entered a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating, organic structure. Tendrils extended from the core, connecting it to the hive's defenses. At its center was the Zurith Queen, a towering, insectoid figure with a crystalline exoskeleton that shimmered ominously. Her multifaceted eyes glowed with an unsettling intelligence. "She's not going to let us take this easily," Mira muttered, her grip tightening on her rifle. The queen let out a deafening screech, and the chamber came alive with Zurith drones. The team scattered, engaging the swarm as the queen moved with terrifying grace, her claws slicing through the air. Elias focused on the core, his mind racing. "Koresh, Mira, set the charges. Ralvar and I will keep her busy." Ralvar growled in agreement, his massive frame charging toward the queen. His energy cannon fired in rapid bursts, each shot forcing her back. Elias joined him, his plasma rifle targeting the queen's legs in an effort to slow her down. "You fight well, human," Ralvar said, his voice booming. "But she is a formidable foe." "Just keep her distracted," Elias replied, dodging a swipe from the queen's claw. "We only need a few more minutes." Meanwhile, Mira and Koresh worked frantically to plant the charges on the core. The tendrils writhed violently, as if sensing the threat. Zurith drones swarmed toward them, but the rest of the team held the line, their weapons blazing. "Charges set," Mira called, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We need to move, now." Elias glanced at the queen, who was recovering from Ralvar's last attack. She let out another screech, her focus shifting toward Mira and Koresh. Elias's heart pounded as he realized what was about to happen. "She's going for the core," he shouted. "We can't let her stop them." Without hesitation, Elias sprinted toward the queen, his plasma blade igniting with a hiss. He leaped onto her back, driving the blade into the joints of her exoskeleton. The queen thrashed violently, her movements growing more erratic. "Harper, what are you doing?" Mira yelled. "Just go." Elias shouted, his voice strained. "Get everyone out of here." Ralvar roared in defiance, stepping between the queen and the others. "I will not leave you, Harper." "You have to," Elias said, his green eyes locking with Ralvar's. "This mission doesn't work unless someone holds her off. Now go." Reluctantly, Ralvar nodded, leading the team toward the exit. Mira hesitated, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and despair, before following. As the team escaped, Elias focused all his energy on the queen. She bucked and thrashed, but he held on, his blade carving deep into her exoskeleton. The core's glow intensified, the charges counting down to detonation. In those final moments, Elias felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't just about survival, it was about giving humanity and the Vortons a chance to thrive. A chance to build something better. "Let's see how you handle this," he muttered, driving his blade into the queen's center. The explosion rocked the hive, a blinding light consuming everything. The shuttle carrying the strike team narrowly escaped, its occupants silent as they watched the hive collapse behind them. Myra's knuckles were white as she gripped her seat, her eyes refusing to leave the viewport. Ralvar spoke softly, his voice heavy with sorrow. "He fought with honor. He gave us a future." Elias Harper's sacrifice became a symbol of the Alliance's strength. In the weeks that followed, the Zurith forces faltered, their hive mind shattered. Humanity and the Vortons stood together, stronger than ever, united by the courage and ingenuity of one man. And as the stars burned brightly overhead, they remembered that even in the darkest of times, hope could shine through, if only they dared to reach for it.